Okay, good evening. Welcome to today's lesson. In today's lesson, we'll be looking at CSS layout, CSS grid layout. To be more precisely, CSS grid. So CSS grid allows you to partition your content in a way that is presentable and easy to make use of. So what we mean by that is, let's look at a website and see where that is coming from. So for every website has what we call layout. Layout means the way content are being assembled, they are being arranged. So every website is unique in a way that they arrange their layout. So I'm going to open a couple of websites. So we just opened Reddit, and let me open Twitter. So when you look at Reddit, for example, you will notice some section, some group of sections. So we discussed this, but I just want to, cover it quickly. So on the top hand side, we have what we call the head section. So this part for this template is looking as is fixed, and then we have the left hand side, which happens to house the menu. So as I've said, each website has their own way, or that they've decided that they want to present the information they are showing you on their own website. So if you look at YouTube, for example, so YouTube also have this fixed kind of effect on the top, and you also notice on the left hand side you have menu on the left hand side. So let's look at Twitter. Twitter, for example, has something different. It has there's no fixed header per se. You can see the only part that is moving is the middle. The left hand side is where you have the menu, and the right hand side is where you have, I guess, maybe ads or something like that. So that's what they've done. So in this scenario, there are some things that are constant that we've been seeing. So those things are the heading or the head section. We have the navigation section. We have the main section. We have the footer. We have the either left or right part, depending on the way you've decided to design your template. So we can then use, let me show you another screenshot, if that would be of help, to give you an idea of what you should be looking at for. So let's say we have, this is a sample, so this is kind of giving us an example. Like we can have a website like this that has the head section, which is saying cities. On the left hand side is giving us the link, that we can click on, and on the content is giving us, where the content of what we've clicked is, and then the footer. So we'll do something like this today. We'll be able to do what we're looking at today. Okay, let's go ahead. How do we even come by these templates? How do we design this template in the first place? What is responsible for the design of this template is CSS Grid. So in extension, CSS Grid Layout. So how do you design that? So let's go to the coding and let's get down to business. Okay, so I've put things in perspective here. There's nothing new. The only thing new here is the metadata viewpoint. It's just to make sure that we are viewing what we are looking at is presentable in a mobile format, so that I don't need to be zooming and zooming out. So there will be another video on the head section that contains viewpoints. So let's go ahead and start defining how a grid layout should look like. So we've already also introduced div. So div is just a section where you can kind of put elements, group elements in a place. So one of the requirements for creating a grid is that it will have a parent, and then you have the rest will be children, or the rest will be children. So the requirement is you have a parent and siblings, or we can call them grid and then grid items. So what will be inside will be grid items. So all this white corner you are seeing here is the grid. That's the first element, while the inner ones, they are all the children elements. So they will just be inside it. So once I do the div, you will see it. So here I have it this way. I won't create any classes, just to give you a visual of what's going on. And I'll say 1. I'll just number it 1 to 3, so it's easy for us to see what's going on. So I said something. I said the div that happens first, the first element is the parent, and we can give that a name. You can give it a name, but for simplicity, we'll just say grid. This is what will hold everything. Then individual elements that we have inside it. Let's go back to the visuals. The one that we have inside it, these cities, the menu, the London, the footer, all of them, we'll call them grid item, or you can just say item. So let's just call it grid item. Grid item. So I'm calling everything the same, meaning all of them, they're all grid item. I've not done anything special here. I'm just naming all our variables. Okay, let me even make it. How many sections do we have here now? Let's use this one as an example. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 sections. So I'll go ahead and create 4 divs. That's 4 divs. So let's go ahead and go back to where we have this. So we just had 2. So I have 3 and 4. So let's see what we have in our presentation. Of course, nothing. We are not expecting to see anything. This is understandable. This is the result we have. So what I want to do next is to add color so that we can then have a good visual effect. The first color I want to put is I want to set the background of everything to be like orange so that we can start seeing a visual effect. So I want to start styling now. I want to style our parent grid, and I'm not doing anything out of the ordinary. I'm just setting background color to be, let's say, I want to do a light orange. So light orange with the transparency. So the next thing I want to do right now, apart from that, is I want to now give it the ability to recognize grid item as items. And to do that, we have to tell it to do display. So how's it display here? Remember we used display the last time, or rather we used display and we said grid. So this is a requirement. So I'm going to put a comment so that when you're reviewing it, you know that this is very important. So I just say important. So this part is important to the understanding of what's going to go on next. Now the next part is that you've told it that this system is a grid. You want it to come out in a grid form. The next thing you need to specify is that you need to tell it how it should render, how it should show, the way it should align your grid item. So that's where we'll go to grid templates. Grid template columns. Grid template columns. So how many columns do you want it to have? Let's go to the example. But for the purpose of this, before we go here, this one has, if you look at this, let me open it up. Let's not talk about the columns here to be confusing. But here I can picture 4 columns. So from here is 1 column. Here is another column. Here's another column. 4 to 3 columns. But we'll get to how we got to the number of columns. Let's go back to the code and see how we got to the number of columns. So this grid template column allows you to tell your browser that, okay, this grid should have how many columns. So for the purpose of demo, we can say 2 columns, and then you can specify auto. So you can specify percentages, say one should be 10% and the second column should be 90%. You could do this. So let's just work with auto. Auto means you are giving them equal width and height. You're giving them equal width rather. So if you do this, the next thing we have is that you could see our result is now splitted into 2 columns, 2 by 2 row. So what I want to do next is I want to style this to make it very bold because it's not looking bold now. So what do I style? I style the grid item. What I want to do is just to make it very bold. I can do padding, let's do 20. I can do, let's do border so that we can see the demarcation that is going on in dashed. Let me do dotted. Then let's do orange. Okay. So let me do another border for the whole thing here. Let me change this color. Let me do 4. Okay, so what we've been able to do now is just for visual effects. What I'm doing is just for visual effects, just for you to see clearly. And this color looks a little bit too. Let me do something about the background color. Yeah, let me give it this color. Okay, so this is what I've been able to do. So let me bring the code again, or let me illustrate the code again. What we've done is we've added display to the grid, and we've set the grid item, the grid template column should be auto. What happens if I make it 3? What happens is that the system now recognizes that it will have a 3 column. What happens if I make it 4? It means it will be a 4 column. What happens if I want more item to be added there? So I can decide to say I want 5. So what do you think will happen? The 5th will come on the next one, because I've defined a template that says that it should be 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. So if you keep having more items, those items will keep going underneath. This is just the basic way how it works. You know, we're taking it step by step. So this is the grid section, part 1. Okay, so let's stop. Let's add more columns so that we can have many things to practice with. Before we start tackling the example here, let's add more columns so that you get to have the understanding of what's going on. So let me add 6. Let's take it up to 7, 8, 9, and 10. Let me just display this and see what we have. So what I want to do right now is I want to increase the font of what's going on, because I'm not really liking the way it's showing. So let's do font size. All these things doesn't have anything to do with it. I'm just having. So let's do font size. Let's do font weight. Go and so okay. So using 4 columns, this is what we are left with. So let's make it up to 3. Let's work with 4, but let's make it 12, because I'm about to show you some things. Okay, so the more you add that, the more it adds to the grid, and it creates this kind of effect. Now, how do you manipulate this grid to give you, some effects that you want? Because if you notice, our result is not a perfect grid. You can see that it has cut through some lines. It's not like the grid that we're seeing here. How do you turn this to this? You have to first know some techniques. Yeah, there are some things you need to know how to implement before you can do that. So what are those things? So what we've been able to just show you now is just 2 stylings, 2 property: display and grid template columns. Display is to tell you that you want it to show in a grid, while grid template column is to tell you how number of columns to show. Now, how do you now tell it that, oh, you want to cover all this place? You want this one to cover all this place. How do you give it such a rule? Or you want this one to cover from 1 to 2. You want it merged together. How do you tell it? To give it those directives, you need to style individually that part you want to adjust. So we want to adjust 1, for example. So let's go to the code that is handling 1. This is it here. So we need to style this place. So how do we need to give it, let's give it a unique class so that we can go and style it in our code. So let's give it a unique class. Let's say GI, that's G item 1. That's what we're calling it now. And let's say G1 or item 1, I1. So let's style it I1. So let's give it that unique code to 2. Or you want to make 1 take over 2 space like that. Or you want to make 1 take over all the entire row, just like in this example, right? So how do you do that? So there's a class called grid column, and what that does is that it allows you to specify how many what number that you want, and you want to span it to how many sections. So there's the column part. Column is here 1 2 3 4, while row is 1 5 9. We are still on column. Column is 1 2 3 4, while row is 1 5 9. So we're dealing with column now. So there's also grid row. We're talking about column. So to span this across this, so you can do 1. Say you want 1, then if you want to span it across, you know, the row, so you span it, you do span 2. So you then see what it does. Like that, it shifts every other thing down. So it span 1 and shift 2 3. Now the interesting part is what is happening here. This could be where the confusing thing can happen. Notice what it did here. It took over column 1 and 2. So I'm going to name it literally and number it literally now. This 1, this 2, this 3, this 4. Like if you are counting, don't follow the numbers here. If you are counting it to 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why when I was counting this one, I told you this is like 4. If I count this 1, 2, 3, 4, it looks like 4. We'll get to this part and you will see how we'll deal with it. So if I want to now make this 1 take over everything, I have to go back to my code. Instead of 2, I can now say span it through 4, and it will take over that. This is how it works. And you can do the same thing across board. If you want to do row parts, like this section, you want to break through all this section, you can use the same method to do it. But this time around, instead of using grid column, you use grid row. So let's try and break 2 and 6 together. Let's see how that can happen. Let's break 2 and 6 together so that we'll have this, you know, standing as it is. So how do we do that? Where do you want to add the code to break? It's 2 you want to break, so it's 2 you need to add your CSS style to. So this is 2 here, and by the way, if you just type anything here, that will be what will be inside there, you know. So we're just using that numbers as a case, as a pointer for us to know where what is what. So here I go back here and do I2. So I come here, I do I2, and we add our code, and our code is grid. We're not doing column again now. Of course, let's even repeat the same code. Let me just show you just for so if we do 1.span2, do you see what it does? So you just span like this since we are doing column. So but we are doing row now. I want to demo row now. The same effect. You don't need to change anything. The only thing we're changing is this. And the reason why we're saying 2 is we want to do from here downward. So if we do that, we have, okay, this is supposed to be 2 because we are working on row 2. That's what this is about. This is row 2, span 2. Row 1, span to 4. So this is row 2, cut out the 2. That's how we have something like this. Then you can see that is you are building it up already. Then to do the footer part, you know, we repeat the same thing we did on one section, and we cut it fully. So now, if we now want to build this entire thing, now let's now build this entire thing. If we want to build, remember it's only 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what that means is that we don't need all these other ones again. We just make it stop at 4. Those are all the grid items that we need. And having that, we stop. Then we now start implementing. Our first rule that it says, let's check the first thing that it says. Fully, then let's check if that is done. The first one is done. The second one is for us to have, let's see what the second one. Second one will not need to have any style. Let's not style the second one. Let's leave the name there, but let's remove the style. our styling, what we did in the number 1 is okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Go ahead, please.
Since based on what we have as an example,
yes,
the footer is not included.
We're going to add it. Just let's keep building it. We're going to add it.
Okay.
So let me even give them their proper names. So let's say cities, right? And let's say I'll just call it, in fact, let me call it, instead of cities, let me say header or head. And let me say this one is navigation. Then I will do this one is main, and this one is data. Okay, so let's see how we are able to achieve that. So we have this one to go through, instead of it going through 4, I think we need to go through 3. It is important. This one, instead of it being 4, can say 3. So if we have 3 there, instead of spanning through 4, we'll span through 3. We'll have it this way. So we have head, nav, main. So footer now needs to come down. So footer that needs to come down, I can call this I4 or I footer. But let me give it a name. I can call it footer. I can call this one head. So footer is in row 2, right? And then row 2, and I'm spanning 3. So I have this effect. This is what I have. So I have that done there. Let's start the explanation again. So what I want to do is, since if I go ahead and do footer code like this, let me undo what I've done. So I'm just going to duplicate this guy and give this guy a footer. So what we've done here is that we've changed this grid, because this is 1, 2. There's no actual grid that is sitting here, or rather actual div that is sitting here. However, the one that is supposed to sit here, that's supposed to make it perfect, we've brought it down. So we need to replace it with something here and then merge it, or we stretch this one to take the space. This main, we stretch it to take the space, because this is taking 1 space, this is taking 1 space, no one is taking this space. So this space is available, so we need to stretch it for the main to take each space. So let's give the name main a name. So we'll call it main, and let's go and style our main. So I call it main. Is on column 1, and then we'll span 2. Column 1, let me see. Okay, column 2 rather. Column 2, then we span it to 2. So you can see that that's what we have here. So this now form this. And now forms this. So let's now actually do, we are going to write this exact same thing here, by the way. As we're going to do this exact thing. So I'm going to see it, the same color, background and everything. Let's do it. Let's put it to play. So quickly, let's do that quickly. So what we want to do right now is okay, cities, nav, that. Okay, might not be exact color, but let's quickly do it so that we can move on to the next thing. And we have other example we can do. This is another example. We'll demo this. We'll also do this example just to give us that we understand this. So let's quickly do this. So we can do. We might not even need to spend too much time on it. So we don't waste time. So we have this one called cities. We can just come here. You know, this is navigation, so we can use UL so that we can have a list of links. So we can do li, and we can do a, and we can say link 1. I just do href like this, and I can just keep creating as many links as I want. So if I save that, you can see that it's looking like what we have here. So the next thing I want to do now is to just put London here. So here will now be maybe H2, say London, and we come here, say paragraph, testing content, and we'll come to the footer, we just enter it in the middle. So we're done, practically done. The screen is not refreshing fast enough. So that's it. We've successfully done grid. Let me quickly do a recap. The only thing that we did, as in one of the things you need to put into place, three things we just talked about. The grid display has to be grid. The template will determine how many columns. You see when I was counting the columns the other time, how many columns? This one is 3 columns. This nav has 1 column, and the London took 2 columns, right? So that's how we did auto. We did 3. And then you can manually specify that, okay, you want many to be 10%, and the rest can actually be auto. Or you can be more specific and say 50, or 40 rather. And there are other forms of measurements that we can put to play. So I think because the screen is so, let's do 20, 40, and let's do this and see. So you can see it's adjusting. You can see 25 and do 35 there. So depending on what works for you in what you're doing. So as you adjust the screen, it also, adjust and gives you something you can work with. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing, so that let's do another example, so that we can solidify, our understanding of what we're doing. So we're going to use this one. I'm going to start again from the beginning. I'm going to clear everything just to give us a new, so that we'll start from the beginning again. So let's clear everything. So I'm going to clear the grid, everything, right? Let's clear everything. Even the styling and even the grid. Okay, everything is cleared. We want to start from the beginning. Remember, I kind of counted the column, saying 1, 2, 3, 4. This looks like a 5-column thing, So, and you don't really need to. You can just start up with 3 columns because they look, even though they're not equal, that the main, is literally big sometimes. And by the way, we're going to do other sites as well, so to give you more understanding. So we can start up with 3, and over time you can extend it. So let's start up with 3 equal columns, and let's do this quickly. So let's do our div, and so since we already, let's just say is grid, the rest is grid item. Then we do div class grid. In fact, you can call it anything. You can just call it item, right? Item. So all these things are named. Anything you want to give it is fine. So let's use numbers for now. So you can create as many as you want, but let's just create the numbers that we need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can start naming them right away. So we have header, we have menu, you have your main, right, and footer. Main, right, and footer. Okay, so next thing we want to do is start styling. We've seen how it looks like, but let's go into the styling so that we can see what we are doing, the resulting output of what we are doing. Suddenly, I think our port has stopped. Let's relaunch that. Okay, so this is what we have. Fine. let's start styling the background and everything so that to give us a visual effect. So you want to the grid, or let's not do FEC so I won't confuse you on what I'm doing. So first of all, one of the requirements is that we do the display has to be grid. The next thing that is required is that you specify the template. How many columns do you want to have? You know, that's what the grid template is all about, the grid template column. How many columns do you want to have? So we did auto. Later you can then be specifying once you have it. So this one says 3. That's the work of this one. So this one we've done. So it's now put this together. And remember, the reason why we color it was so that we can have, you know, a visual. It's good to always have visual, you know, representation of everything, so I know, okay, the header is here, so that you don't think that they are on the same line. And that's why I normally have them spaced out, so that you can have a good view of what is going on. So let's have those FAC as well. So let's have it spaced out and bold. So how do you have it spaced out? So we do padding, right? We do 20px, then we do font size, we do 20 as well. Then we do font weight, so I'll be bold. Then what else do we need to do? We can add background color. So let's do this color. Then border is very important, so that you see where each one of them end and where the other one is starting from. Border, I can do 3px, dotted. Let's use dash this time around. Oh, okay, this is not okay. So we have it this way. Okay, so let's work with this, even though the color is a little bit tough on the eye. So let's move on. What we want to achieve with this is let's go back to what we want to do. Number one, the first one is easy to do, right? The header, you span it across, very easy. So let's go back to the code and see how to achieve that. We want to span this across. So first of all, we need to style it individually. We'll end up styling, we'll create the class so that we can style the header alone from the rest of the pack. So come here, we do the third thing that we introduce. Remember, we're introducing, okay, it's 4 things we introduce: display, grid template column, grid column, and grid row. So this time around, because we want to span it across the column, we introduce grid column. And we are dealing with the first row, span to 3. So it gives us this effect. This is very easy. This is very easy. So let's go to the second one. The second one, we have this menu. Let's see where it's sitting. It's sitting in the right place, even though notice it was span bottom, like it was span row downwards, because it's taking 2 columns. We'll get there. So we have this, we have this. So what we want to do is we want to drop this one to take 1 more row downward. Look at the layout, very important. It took 1 more row downward, so we need to do that. So how do you take 1 more row downward? We go to the menu. Let's go and style the menu. Let's give it a class, menu class, and come to this menu. Then, well, of course, it's not going to be column, it's going to be row. And row 2, we're spanning 2. So if you do it this way, you have this feature. Perfect. The next thing is we want to make sure that this footer completes here. Let's see the example again. The footer completes the whole of this. So we've already taken 1 out of 3. So to make the footer complete, we just need to add 1 more. So we're going to repeat what we have in the header, but what we're going to have is span 2. So let's give it a name, footer. And we come here, just copy and paste this. Our footer is spelled this way, and the column is column 3, 1, 2, 3. So the third column, and we're spanning how many? We're spanning 2. So it's going to block out this one. That's the intention. So let's check it out. Okay, so it's not sitting well. Let's see what is happening. So let me check this. Is it supposed to be okay? I think it's supposed to be 2 instead of 3. So okay, because I think it's still reading it. It's been on the second row. So we have 2 span 2, and then we have this result. This is what we have. So let me make that color is shining too much. Let me make it a little bit dull. Okay. So what we can do, you can see that everything is 1, 1, 1, equal weight and size. But if you notice here, this is kind of 2. This can be 1 or something. So how do you give it that more room? How do you give this main guy more room? To give this guy more room, we need to increase everything. So it means it won't be 3, it will be 4. So let's play with it so you see how it works. So everywhere you've have span 1, or rather span 2, it means you increase it to span. This one we didn't have any span, but let's start adding one more column to it so you see the result. So if I add auto here, everything is going to distort, by the way, but just keep calm. You will get to understand what's going on. Everything is going to scatter, but let's just do it. So you can see everything has scattered. So number 1, the header is saying to 3. What does that mean? We need to span it to 4. So we'll fix the first header. The next thing is that the one that needs to increase is the main. Notice that we want to give main more length, not the other things. The main we are focused on. So it means we need to style the main. If not style the main, so you give a main the class, and what we are doing to it is that the same way we'll span the footer, we'll span the main like that. Then that should just work. Then note that the footer itself is 2, but because we've added 1, so we need to make it 3 to complete this part. Come to the footer and we span 3. So, and this is how you adjust it until you have like a balanced view of what you want, depending on the site you are designing. You want to say, okay, is this main content, is this main site, main part enough to show my content, or I want this smaller, or I want main to be more. In my view, I think main should still be more, and push this one aside. So let's add 1 more, and then we'll call it a day. So I'll just add 1 more auto. Then I will just, since I know what it's going to require me to do, I'll just add 5 to this, add this to 3, and add this to 4, and everything should just work automatically. So that's it. So you can see that the main is being stretched. So that's how you achieve that. So this is layout design CSS, and this is what you use to design your site. Literally. Do you have any question? So you can see that the things we are using are, everything in total we use is 4. This display, or rather display, grid template, column is just to decide how many columns you want to have, and grid column and grid row.
Is it at the point of designing a site, or after you design a site, you determine this, or before you start building the site, what is when this comes to play?
Okay, the first thing you need to do when you want to design a site is to get a template. You get, like, design the template of how the site is going to look like. All the sites we saw before now, the likes of Reddit, Twitter, the first thing that they did was to go, backstage, speak with the engineers and everything. How should this website look like? They would draw. They call this storyboard. There's a storyboard. They would draw and they say, okay, this is how it should be. When people log in, it should be on this side. It should be on this side. All those things are predetermined first before you come to code. So once it is predetermined, you can then come to your site and start building the layout. It will be drawn like this. Say, okay, this is where we want the search button to be. It will literally be done by hand or with other tools, to give the designer heads up. It's not really the designer that for in a large establishment, there are people that do all these things, that do design and then give it to people that will actually turn it to HTML code or do the front end like that. So, but because if you are a freelance, you can do everything yourself. But however, you don't just start up like this. You have to understand the project that needs to be done. So if it's a portal, web portal, for example, you know that it will have several contents. What determines the way your site looks is the kind of application you are trying to build. You get. So if you see, we saw Wikipedia, saw the way it looks like. You saw Facebook. Facebook has so many columns, because there's so many content you want to display. So you can't just, put it as a site that you read information on. So depending on the site you are trying to design. Yeah. No, it has, you can see its main content. It has several designs elements. So you can see here now, this is here they didn't have the footer, or rather, sorry, they didn't have the header. Kind of. You can see everything flows. This is the main content. And the left menu side. At the bottom is the footer. So very important. You need to be able to identify all the sections to the site. So let me try and break it down if I can from here. So you can see the head side, right? Then you can see the content. So you can see the navigation bar on the left hand side. So you can see the navigation part. Do you see that? This is the navigation part. This is the content. That's this part here. That's the content. Then this is the head section. So all these things you need to know how you want to design your site. Some people might put the head somewhere else. So it's your own prerogative what to decide that you want to do. So you need to do the decision first. Once you've decided, okay, then you go and start building your layout. Once you build your layout, you start putting a logo. For example, if you wanted to go ahead and design this site now, we can put our logo here. You can start putting things. This is where you write copyright. This is where you put content. Do you get? So this is where you put your list of menu. You start building your site. So that's how it works. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There's something we call HTML semantics, and what that does is that it allows you to use some of these elements to identify what you're trying to do. So instead of you using div all the time, instead of using div, you can use these elements. They call them semantics elements. They define sections on your HTML pages. I know we didn't talk about this one. So what do I mean by all this semantic? Now, instead of you doing div footer, there's a tag called footer. Instead of you saying div right, there's a tag that says a aside. So all these tags are semantic. They don't have any special attribute, or they are used for a specific purpose. So let's play with it. So instead of me doing this, right, I could just say, just watch. I could just say header, right? And instead of me saying styling this header, I will say no. I already have a header style or a header element. Go and take care of everything. This one now is element definition by name. So if I come here now, everything will still work. But this time around is using header element, which makes it more easy to read instead of me reading it through class. Another thing I want to show you is nav. I can also use nav. It's called navigation, but nav for sure. So I'm going to be replacing everything you're seeing here. So we just talked about header. Another element is called nav. They say the nav element represents a section of a page that links to other pages. So what we want to put inside is navigation. So instead of me saying menu, I can just say nav. Notice that there's no dot again because this is an element name already. So let's go ahead and do this section. This part that is called main. How is main defined in the system? Main is defined by either article or section. So I can just use section. So I can then end it with what? Section. And what do? I don't need to specify main class. I then come here and say what? I say section. Again, it's not going to be a class. It's going to be defined by element. The other one that I have is a side. A side is it defines context aside from the main content. Something that is not the main content is just a side, piece. So the same thing. I didn't style right, so there's nothing to do about that. Then footer, we'll call it footer. It has a tag also called footer. I don't need to style it. Just call footer. And instead of putting the CSS class, I'll just turn it to element. And I save. Everything just worked. I don't need to. So what's different between this and where we are coming from? The difference is that now you are using HTML semantics. Like you're actually using a new name instead of using div. Before now, we've been using div. These ones are more pronounced, to what it is you are trying to achieve. Like everything here should be header. This is a navigation. This is a section. You can use article as well. This class. This way you make your item. How do I put it now? You don't need to worry about having classes because you can always style the element's name, on its own. So that's what this one speaks to. And I can just go on and on. I can just do quite some interesting thing. And this is totally me removing the class totally. I want to style everything. And I think the main section side, yes. What this one is just doing is just replacing me trying to remove anything class. That's what I'm just trying to do. Nothing special. And everything still remains the same. So as I've said, you will rarely be using this method. This is for knowledge purpose. You will rarely be using grid. What you'll be using is Bootstrap. Once you just find, you saw Bootstrap the other day. As in the other day, I quickly showed you, what it's all about. You quickly do all these things in Bootstrap in no time. Of course, if you are doing something with a very small project, because Bootstrap requires you to download the file and connect it. So if you are doing something very, small, you can easily also start with this and move on. And that's it. So removing all the efficacy and coloring, we have this. So this is how your site is supposed to be looking like. So, shine. Yeah, this is more like it. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.